Good day to you all. My name is Milene Đukanović. I'm an associate professor at Faculty of Electrical Engineering, University of Montenegro. At bachelor and doctoral level, I teach students 3D modeling and 3D printing. Every once in a while, there comes a new technology that changes life of people. My opinion is that additive manufacturing, popularly called 3D printing, is actually that kind of technology, and it has the potential to change our lives. This actually may be the most eye-catching development since Gutenberg invented the printing press already 600 years ago. So additive manufacturing, and I will refer to it from now on as 3D printing technology, is actually a modern technology for manufacturing three-dimensional objects. An object is created by successively adding layers of material. 3D printing generally represents a faster, cheaper, and easier solution compared to other technologies for producing 3D objects. It allows for the creation of models of parts and assemblies using different kinds of materials with different physical and mechanical properties in one single printing process. In recent years, actually, 3D printers have become financially accessible to houses, but also to small and medium-sized businesses, bringing prototyping out of heavy industry into office environments and also home environments. In addition to prototyping, 3D printers offer great potential for producing various applications in fashion industry, jewelry industry, footwear, industrial design, architecture, the automotive industry, aviation, dentistry, and in general, all fields of medicine. So how did it all start? The American inventor Chuck Hull has actually been the first person that has printed one three-dimensional object in 1986. It was just a little small cup made using the stereolithography technique, which cures plastic resin under the influence of light. So 3 years after, he patented this technique and also founded his own company called 3D Systems. Today, 3D Systems is one of the leading companies in the world in the field of 3D printing. Also, this company developed the first file format for 3D printing with the extension of STL, referring to stereolithography process. So in the late 1980s, Scott Crump was the second person, an engineer, that laid the foundations for fuse deposition modeling technique. It is known as FDM printing, and he patented this technique while also founding the company Stratasys. This is so the second biggest company in the area of 3D printing. Now what I would give an example of one great documentary movie is Print the Legend. It is filmed in 2014 and it actually describes how 3D printing as a technology has evolved through startups that were thinking about first 3D printers, that were also checking out all various materials that can be used, as well as mentioning some controversial figures in the industry, such as Cody Wilson. And you may have heard of him because he was the first one that has put the open source file on the internet, which allowed people to 3D print the first pistol. So what does a 3D printer do? It converts a digital file into a three-dimensional object. And this process is done through additive manufacturing, or as we say, 3D printing. This method, of course, of production involves building objects by layering successfully fine segments of material on top of each other. So the price of a printer, if you ask yourself, would you like to have a first 3D printer at your home, primarily reflects its capabilities based on several criteria. First one is, what do you want to produce? So you need to have in mind the size of the object. I usually do jewelry or some objects that are used in kitchen or in house environment. Then you have to think about the quality of finances of detail and, of course, the lifespan of the printer. As the printer is cheaper, then it means his characteristics are at a lower level. So the price alone should not determine your decision. Rather, the intended use of the printer should dictate the appropriate price range. So once you know the maximum size of the object, you will frequently print, the required detail resolution, the complexity of the design, and how often you will use 3D printer. Will it be every day or once in a month? You can then choose a brand that supports those needs. So the price will just naturally follow from those requirements. The thicker the layer, that means the more visible the steps will be on curved surfaces of the model, resulting in lower detail quality. So in order to determine the level of detail a printer can produce, you have to check what are the printer's specification for layer resolution or minimum layer height. So the higher the resolution, the more detailed the print can be. Typical layer thickness for FDM 3D printers ranges between 20 and 600 microns. A layer thickness below 20 microns means your printer can be used for more specialized applications, such as creating molds for parts. Not all FDM 3D printers have same capabilities when it comes to multi-material printing or when it comes to producing complex geometries. This is because not all FDM printers have the same number of nozzle. So single extrusion means you have one nozzle in a 3D printer and you can print one object just in one color. If you want that the object changes the color, then you need to have dual extrusion, or if you want more colors, more different colorful layers in an object, then you need to search for multi-extrusion 3D printers. So even FDM materials for 3D printing cost only a few cents per gram. It's important to know which material suits the characteristics of the model you want to produce. The most commonly used material is PLA, and it is a cornstarch-based plastic. It is also recyclable and biodegradable, so most of people use PLA filaments. Of course, you need to know their physical and mechanical characteristics, such as flexibility, strength, or heat resistance. Because successful printing with different materials requires various capabilities from 3D printer, such as nozzle temperature, heated print bed temperature, that is where layers successfully print themselves on top of each other, or extra durable components. And of course, we need to know it depends on the price. So not all printers are able to meet these demands. In this table on this slide, materials and properties, we have summarized the characteristics of some commonly used 3D printing materials. To work with a 3D printer, you need an additional software. First of all, you need a software for 3D modeling. After you do your sketch and you 3D model that object in a software, you need another software that is connected with 3D printer. It is called slicing software. Usually, all the companies that print 3D printers have their own branded slicing software. But also there are some softwares from 3D companies that you can use for various 3D printers. So the aim of this slicing software is that it should be intuitive and very easy to use. Software that comes with built-in material properties, and your 3D printer should make it easier to get started. In that software, you can decide where on the printing bed you should put the pieces of the objects and how many objects you want to print. Also, you can choose one nozzle, or if you have dual extrusion or multi-extrusion nozzles. You can choose the color of the filaments, and at the end, you can start the 3D printing process. 3D printing plays a transformative role across various fields, including medicine, architecture, cultural heritage, and then comes my favorite, fashion and food production. In medicine, it enables the creation of customized prosthetics, implants, surgical guides, and even bio-printed tissues tailored to individual patients, enhancing treatment outcomes. I will give you some examples. Once a man was suffering from a malignant type of tumor that has affected part of his chest. The implant transplant procedure was performed at the University Hospital of Salamanca, and the high-tech prosthesis was developed and 3D printed at National Research Centre in Melbourne, Australia. This entire process of developing and printing this prosthetic, as well as the operation itself, lasted less than a month. So what did the surgeons do? Firstly, they have used a high-resolution 3D CT scanner to determine which part of the chest is needed to be replaced. Afterwards, they used 3D printed to operate with electron beams, and this 3D printed has cost around $1 million. And only 12 days after the operation, the patient was discharged from the hospital in a very good condition. So this was actually the first big thing, because this was the first operation of this kind at global level. The greatest adventure of 3D printing in medicine is the ability to produce prototypes quickly. So when waiting for a life-saving operation, this is undoubtedly one of the fastest and most viable options. Dentistry is actually a field of medicine that is already on the path towards fully adopting a digital workflow. And this should come as no surprise. Every set of teeth is unique, which means the every dental product must be individually tailored. This need for high customization and small final products makes dentistry a perfect field for the application of 3D printing. I will give one more example. Company Open Bionics began 3D printed producing of bionic orthopedic aids, and since then they have been selling them all around the world. They came with an idea to afford also this prosthesis to children, and their most popular prosthetic arms are inspired by famous movies such as Marvel Heroes, Star Wars, Frozen, etc. So thanks to 3D scanning and printing, they can produce a custom-made prosthetics for each user and do so much faster and more cost-effectively than their competitors. Additionally, these bionic arms are also equipped with sensors that respond to muscle signals with a level of precision comparable to that of a real hand. Also, their built-in motors provide haptic feedback, which is further enhanced with sound and light signals, giving the user as much information as possible. Despite all these technological features, the bionic arm weighs less than 1 kilogram, making it suitable even for children as young as 8 years old. And actually, if we question ourselves, when has 3D printing become that much popular in medicine? It is actually during the COVID-19 pandemic. And we did a lot of things also in Montenegro. We have printed different 3D masks where we found the open source files on internet, and also many masks that we needed to also redefine because it is not logical for a modern age, but we ran out of all filaments in Montenegro. In this time, we also had one big national project where we wanted to test actually the physical and mechanical characteristics of some new filaments that came in the open. So our idea was to produce a mask that will change its color if a person has high temperature. But it was very complicated to do this whole research because actually of the breathing process, the mask has changed its temperature and we could not do it as precisely as we wanted. So what we have did is designed a 3D printed bracelet that would change its color if a person has a high temperature. So if a person has 37, this bracelet would change its color from gray to orange. And if he has a temperature over 39, it would change its color to red. We also have designed this bracelet with some figures and shapes of Montenegro map, so it could be famous in the world. And this was a really successful project. Also, another area is architecture, where 3D printing allows for rapid prototyping of complex structures and even the construction of full-scale building components, while reducing material waste and construction time. So, for example, you have some 3D printing for physical models that showcase complex geometry and curves that would be very difficult to create by hand. Another example is to build low-income housing in countries where we have a great number of poor people on a low social level, or where we have a disaster relief villages where we have very big disasters happening in the world. Also, China is known for printing a 5-story apartment building using one giant 3D printer and recycled construction waste. One more example would be Netherlands, where they have small 3D printed houses for tourists that can make and take a break, and everything in that house is 3D printed. They also have a full-size steel pedestrian bridge in Amsterdam using robotic arms and welding techniques. One also famous case is Dubai, known for its Office of the Future, where all offices and buildings for offices are 3D printed. Of course, this is designed by Gensler, but also it is constructed and printed in Shanghai while assembled in Dubai. When it comes to cultural heritage, it aids in the preservation and restoration of artifacts by producing accurate replicas of damaged or lost items. So we have so many projects that we have done in Montenegro for captivating or protecting cultural heritage of Montenegro. One of those projects is 3D printing coins, while we were doing cooperation with Museum of Money in our royal capital, Cetinje. So we have used several coins, and we have 3D scanned them, then we have 3D modeled them, and at last we have 3D printed them. They were also a part of our great exhibition. This year, in cooperation with many institutions, for example, also with the library for blind people, we have scanned many vases and objects from our museums, and we have 3D modeled them and 3D printed them, made also a huge exhibition that was very popular during February month this year. So these are some main fields where you can find a lot of applications for 3D printing. Now you want to maybe ask yourself, how can you make a connection with 3D printing? What would you rather do? Would you just download an open source file and 3D print it? Or you would create something new? I think it's very important, and I think there is a lot of space for you to create your own creative projects. So, for example, biggest inspirations for me are fashion and gastronomy. That is what I really like. And we have done a lot of projects like that at national level, mostly working with Ministry of Education, Ministry of Culture, Fund for Innovations, etc. We have presented a lot of exhibitions where we have done various things, and we have done a lot of workshops, especially with children in elementary and high schools. We had several times 6-month projects and education for creative students from elementary and high schools, where they learned 3D modeling and 3D printing. So my most famous and projects that I really like are projects in creative industry. So from 2019, every year I have been doing these kind of projects, and I've got national level funds for them. Usually what I do is that I very wisely choose persons that I work with. First of all, it must be one new designer in every project, where I can combine 3D printing mostly with textile industry. So those have been mostly the cooperations that I have done, but also you need to have a good photographer, you need to have a good graphical designer, and you just need to follow the story. So in 2019, for example, with one local designer, I have done 3D printed bow ties. So this part where the bow tie was 3D printed, and this colleague has used zero waste textile materials. And it was the first project that we have done together. Later on, I started with jewelry, finding mostly inspiration in many travels through Europe and through the world. Another famous project was bags with 3D printed handles. While on this eco leather, another designer colleague has painted Montenegro with different colors. So Montenegro's actually nature. One more was laces that we have done, and medallions with the faces of Montenegrin princes. In our past, we had many famous and beautiful princes, and we just wanted to use this cultural heritage. One of our last projects was when we turned to vases, and we have presented this project and these vases at Paris Design Week in 2023. Among 40 vases in the entire world, we have been selected to present our own. And this is actually the moment where we also, with the photographer, famous photographer from Montenegro, we started applying artificial intelligence in photographies. This we have also used in cooperation with some famous hotels and banks for creating their insights with these vases, which are made of recyclable and biodegradable materials. We have made many cooperations with writers of poems. For example, for one beautiful book of poems written in Montenegro, which is called I Don't Want Romeo, I Want You. We made a vase where we put all these letters. So it was a great success. We had one great exhibition that was actually successfully opened by our prince, Nikola Petrović, and where we presented all 3D printed objects created in these projects of creative industries in the last 5 years. Also for the design, I received many awards in Ljubljana, in Milano, etc. And one of my favorite cooperations was with the Bureau for Education, and it was a 3-year project where each year we have created 3D printed toys for children that are in the process of inclusion in education, in kindergartens and in elementary schools. So that is where we have also worked with different psychologists that could tell us what those kids like, what kind of colors, what shapes, and etc. We also created sets for food, so plates, cups, etc. And these projects were presented at Milan Design Week, and also this project was chosen among 40 in the world to be presented in the headquarters of United Nations in Vienna. So these projects are something that I was very, very, very proud of. And in 2024, we received the Game Changer Award for the most green project in the last year. One more area that is very, very inspiring for me is 3D food printing. Now, many people ask me when I say 3D food printing, so what do you print? Well, we print food. How do we do it? We choose different models. So we 3D model something that we want, for example, flag of Montenegro. We put the ingredients into cartridges and then we just print it out. It can be chocolate, it can be something soft like puree, or something else that you want. It is very famous in the world, and many Michelin restaurants have been using it already in their kitchens. So you can also think about that. There are also some startup restaurants that have been opening, not just giving you the 3D printed food, but also everything in those restaurants is 3D printed. Tables, chairs, plates, cups, etc. So this is a really inspiring going out for everyone. If you get to be in a city like that, I definitely suggest that you visit one kind of that restaurant. One of the most popular fields in 3D printing, where I also find inspiration, is fashion. And actually there are two designers that I like their work. It is Iris van Herpen and the other designer is Julie Kerner. So Iris van Herpen is famous for her wardrobe, which is 3D printed, and famous stars in the world wear it for different carpet events, etc. Julie Kerner created wardrobe for movie Black Panther, and she also received an Oscar for it. So they are a true inspiration. I actually started 3D modeling and 3D printing in fashion in 2019, where I organized first runway that was inspired by China, and it was called All Colors of China. Afterwards, there were many fashion events, such as Alice in Wonderland, Tomorrow is Now. It is during Montenegro Fashion Week, where we presented this famous children novel and presented 3 different women, actually, that were following the path of Alice, Queen of Hearts, and Mad Hatter Girl. Now, at the moment, we are preparing another runway. It is inspired by my latest trip to Japan and my favorite artist, Yayoi Kusama. You all must have heard of her. Yayoi Kusama used a lot of dots in her work, and actually these 3D printed vases that were scanned in one of our Montenegrin museums. So they are actually a cultural heritage of Montenegro. And then we just added with a dual extrusion these dots that actually remind us of Yayoi Kusama. So the whole runway that will be dotted will be presented this year in October. So I want to, at the end of this presentation and lecture, want first of all to challenge you to find the area where you are mostly inspired. Find an artist or a scientist, someone whose work you like, you admire, and connect it with your own feelings. And out of that will for surely come a 3D printed model, object, or even one big national or international project. Thank you for your attention. Bye-bye.